Hi everyone, my name is Parmesh and welcome to The Real Deal. This is a show that gives you an opportunity to ask all kinds of questions that you've always wanted the answers for. Maybe about things you've heard in the corridor or on the office grapevine. Hopefully through this show we can bring you some of the answers to the questions that you've always had. Now, as you know, over the last few weeks there's been a lot of really disturbing stories about sexual harassment. And as women across India have started speaking up as part of the Me Too movement, they've been speaking up, they've been speaking out about all the different forms of abuse that they've faced. At Godrej, we've always had zero tolerance for any form of discrimination overall. We have a very clearly stated non-discrimination policy for we don't tolerate any form of discrimination on the basis of nationality, race, color, caste, religion, gender, sexual orientation, disability, age, marital status, whatever category, we just don't discriminate. Through this show, we want to re-emphasize all that we stand for and also talk to our senior leaders, Balram and Nisa, about why showing respect and building a diverse Godrej is so important for us, especially in the context of the Me Too movement. So Nisa and Balram, thank you for joining us. I want to start by asking you very personally what Me Too means for each of you, as a business leader, as a team member, as parents, as human beings. How are you feeling in the context of everything that you've been listening to over the past few weeks?
Parmesh, you are right that the news is ugly, but I am very glad that at least it is coming out. Otherwise, people in power at certain places in the society thought that they will do everything and get away with it. So I am very glad this is happening. And I am very sure that this movement is not likely to stop here. Maybe several of the people who have suffered will seek legal recourse and some punishments will be given. As a father of a daughter, I can see that my daughter is very happy about it, and she has been always reacting to this Me Too news very differently because, for example, I cannot see any Kevin Spacey movie if she is around because she just cuts it off because she says that he has been a predator. That is the word she has used. So I'm extremely happy. I hope this movement continues and it continues beyond the metros, because I strongly feel the kind of business I am in, the power play is more severe in our hinterland, where religion and caste also are elements of expression of power. And I hope women come out and say what they should have said earlier. Today we have a very, very powerful tool, the social media and the internet. It will be used judiciously, I am sure, by redefining rules of engagement and behavior with people.
Thank you. Nisa, personally?
Personally, I'm happy to see that it's come to India. Correct. We saw it come out in the US and in the Western world.
Yeah.
We know in India, it's a very paternalistic sort of culture, much more in rural India than it's in urban India. But at least now our educated, privileged women are saying that this is very prevalent.
Yeah.
This is a big problem.
Yeah.
And I really hope that this collective rage, correct? Because this is collective. This is us all standing together will say, stop it, correct? And it's not going to go away immediately, but it started the conversation. It's telling these men who don't know how to behave, like, please behave. And on the areas of gray, because there are areas of gray here, it's saying, let's have a conversation, correct? Yeah. So there's some very clear. Obviously, there's a legal, if there's rape, there's molestation, that's one set.
Yeah.
The other set on harassment, a lot of corporates like us have very strong policies. But there's a whole third piece that's come out, what men call sort of wooing or romance, and women are saying, actually, no, it's not, correct? And I think in India, more than anywhere else, we're probably desperate to have that conversation. And, so I'm really hopeful that this is, not just an urban movement, but this goes across the country. I hope this turns up in how women vote in our elections next year. So I really, hope we bring full force of coming together and saying enough is enough.
Thank you. We can't control the nation and the world, but we certainly can try and shift Godrej in the direction that we want it to go. And in that context, Nisa, you once wrote an email that said there's no place for prejudice at Godrej, only space for open minds and hearts. So I want to ask you specifically, why is inclusion of difference so important to us at Godrej? And what are we really doing to make it possible?
Firstly, I think if you just think about why Godrej exists and why we started in India's freedom movement, correct? We started to say that this is not fair, that India's raw materials go to the British and come back, and our economy suffers, and we said we are part of Gandhi's Swadeshi movement, correct? Most of our profits when we started went back to this idea of that there would be an independent, free India. And I think that value that we stand more for than just making profits is something that's very core to us. And obviously in every generation, what those things that we need to stand up for might be different, correct? Whether it's the LGBTQ movement or a women's movement. So I think it's basic to who we are. It's just the right thing to do. I think the second part, which, sometimes I get tired of even repeating, but research after research shows that inclusive organizations, especially old ones like ours, will let us be more innovative. It will let diverse voices come to the table. We will do better as a business. So I think it's both. I don't think there is any other option. It is our values, it is who we are, and two, it's just damn good for business also. So,
No brainer.
Yeah.
Balram, you've been trying very hard to bring some of these diverse voices into your business. You've been trying very hard to build women's leadership and in sectors which are quite new to this at GAVL. But we also hear stories about some kind of pushback where men particularly tell women that they don't have any role to play in sales or manufacturing. How do you break these stereotypes, and how are you really trying to push and creating, say, GAVL as a more diverse and inclusive space?
So I'm here for last 29 years, and it is my 30th year in this group and this organization. And I'm saying that I can definitely say that inclusiveness has been one of the hallmarks we have had. We have never discriminated ever. The only issue was that our organization is very rural focused, and you know that a lot of things have changed in the country in last decade and a half, and we are just following that trend. We always wanted to make this organization more inclusive. We are trying very hard to do that, and we have been reasonably successful. If you see some of our numbers, that in 2015, we had 2.4% of our workforce which was women. Now it is 6.4% and likely to be 10% in 2 years' time. A lot of steps have been taken by the leadership team. We are strongly committed. We are introducing women in non-traditional areas, what we thought, because it was stereotypical, I can acknowledge, like sales and production. But a lot of effort has gone in. One of the things which I also need to point out is that if we cannot have inclusiveness without an enabling environment and enabling infrastructure. For example, one small thing I want to tell you is that we have 50 plants, and 3-4 years ago when we did audit, only about 20% of them had infrastructure required for women employees. I'm saying those kind of upgradations have happened. Having said that, I must tell you the challenge still remains internal as well as external. The reason is that 90% of our workforce works in Indian hinterland. It is in small cities. Most of our people come from B and C class cities with their stereotypes and thinking. Plus, we cater to farmers who are even lower in the chain of this evolution. So we have pushbacks, but according to me, the answer to that is perseverance, answer to that is continuous education, answer to that is also not getting cowed down by these changes, but come back stronger with amendments, etc. So we can give a equal opportunity to all sexes. And I think we are pretty much there. Managerial cadre particularly we have done well, because women in authority are less, I would say, vulnerable to these kinds of pressures. And if you see from about 2% 3 years or 4 years ago, we are about 12% women in our managerial cadre. So we are on way. I think a lot of things are changing in the company, its people, and outside world also. I'm very sure we'll get to a 10% number in 2 years.
You know, one
And then
thing
hopefully
that,
more.
yeah,
And then
I think one
yeah.
thing that's been really interesting for me to see, especially as we've done these global acquisitions and seen different working cultures abroad, correct? So if we look at countries like Indonesia or Nigeria, which are much more forward in terms of just the number of women participating in the economy, how they think of themselves, it is different than in India, correct? In India, the percentage of women participating in the formal economy has actually been falling in the sort of last decade, correct? So, and then I read our Intune comments, correct? So I actually read past the numbers into the verbal comments, and, you know, sales is not for women and this is not for women, and, you know, and I understand that, you know, we can't just say if you have that bias, we're going to fire you, correct? We have to address that bias. We have to create a safe place for conversation to happen, to say, but hey, you know, in India, in rural India, there are a bunch of ASHA workers who are doing really difficult work. Can we learn how they deal with it, correct? Or organizations that have been successful, or in Nigeria, most of our factory workers are women. What is restricting us? And maybe the ecosystem is different, but there are solutions, correct? And I always think about it. I look at other business houses in India, correct? People who come from the most privileged backgrounds of education. And when there's a son and a daughter, why is it only said that the son can express their potential? I'm sure it's not a genetic thing that these sons are better, correct? So if my father or my mother hadn't said that you are equal, go out and express yourself, do whatever you want, then so we have to create that ecosystem. We have to understand that it's not simple, correct? We do have cases, you know, we had a case about a farmer behaving badly with someone in sales, a woman sales employee of us. And obviously our first reaction is, why would we even put women into that situation? Obviously keeping people safe is also very important. But we have to create that ecosystem where you give people the choice of pursuing their dreams. And if you do that, I've seen it in other countries, correct? We don't face
there are some countries in which we have more female participation.
Oh yes, much more, and it's very senior leadership levels also. So there is cultural context to some of this.
I like that both of y'all are focusing on numbers as well as an enabling ecosystem. I think that's very, very important. Despite our best efforts, we'll increase the numbers, we'll create the enabling ecosystem, but still incidents will happen. So I want to talk about what happens if someone at Godrej, you know, faces harassment. What can they specifically do? I know a lot of people talk about the POSH guidelines, that's prevention of sexual harassment, but you know, very few people perhaps know where these guidelines are located and how you know, what is this policy, how you can act on it, because at that moment, you know, they're really vulnerable. So can you address some of this, or what happens if, you know, you are facing harassment?
You know, so our POSH guidelines are on Godrej. We'll probably just pull them out and, you know, along with this video and workplace, put them up there again. So I think there's definitely POSH guidelines, but there's also, you know, people you work with closely, your superior. If it's not, I mean, if you're making a complaint about them, obviously you're not going to go to them. There is HR, you can reach out. And frankly, in Godrej, I mean, if there is an issue, you can send an email directly to me. I see every complaint that actually comes into the organization, whether it's formal or informal. So I think the important thing here is not to be scared, and feel free, you know, if there is an issue to come up. And it's not always just sexual harassment. We have cases of harassment where people are getting bullied or threatened that if they don't do something, they lose their job. And for us, it's just, I mean, it's just not acceptable.
Yeah, a lot of the harassment is about power in that sense, right?
In addition to what Nisa has said, in Agrovet, what we did was that the HR team reached proactively to almost 90% of the women we have in our workforce, only to ask them and to understand their work environment and if anything like that is there, because everybody sitting, there will be people sitting in some remote place who will be very shy or scared to report anything. So I'm saying we thought it is our responsibility to reach out to them and give that confidence to them. Having said that, I think there are many ways to bring this change. Of course, there has been a huge amount of training and sensitization which has gone in Godrej Agrovet, but it has not been without deterrence also. And whenever there are cases like that, there is zero tolerance and very quick, I would say, redressal in these cases, and that has gone down well with the organization also, because I strongly feel that there will be the bad apples will be in minority. The only thing is that 90% of the bulk keeps quiet and watches what will happen to them. And once we demonstrate that we are very, very serious about it, I think the change will be much faster.
I also think that we should admit, so if you ask me, is there bias at Godrej? I would say probably yes, correct? The other day we were looking at performance and promotion data between men and women, and there was actually absolutely no difference between men and women in terms of their performance. So the number of women as a percentage who get 4 and 5 ratings, or the men who get 4 and 5 ratings. And there was none in promotion at all levels, correct?
And none in salary also, if you
none
see.
None in salary. But you look at 360 degrees and there is a 10 percentile delta, so 0.2. Now, I mean, we have to go into the details of where that's coming from or how. But that is saying, on average, women in a very large sample size are getting rated sort of below men. And, is there a question on such a large sample? Is there some sort of bias that's happening there? So I think one is actually, at the same time, both GAVL and GCPL have the most women board directors of any company, any listed company in India, correct? So, but I think our onus is not to, the idea of diversity and inclusion is to actually use the power of it, which is not PR power, we're doing this so well, but to say, what are we not doing? Because at the end of the day, what is the power of this is that people really come here, and it's not about a policy or 6 months maternity leave and stuff, but they really feel that this is a place where they can flourish. They are sort of inclusive, and I think that work is something that never stops, that you have to sort of keep chasing. So if there's, if there's bias, how do we train? There's one part on this Me Too moment is that when it goes out of hand, but we should really be at the basic level before even that out of hand piece. We should be like super strong.
Yeah, which is what I hope this conversation will kickstart. I want to specifically ask you, you said zero tolerance, and that's excellent. A lot of what we've seen and what's happening with Me Too is at workplaces, a lot of very senior leaders, senior politicians, for example, or CEOs of companies, really people in really high positions, using that position and coercing or forcing or assaulting or harassing their employees below, and to engage against their consent. So my point is, how do we protect against this harassment at a very senior level? In so many companies we see that there are policies, but they are for employees maybe at the middle or the lower end, but senior leaders seem to get away. Can y'all just elaborate on what is it? Do we treat our senior GLF leaders like everyone else, or do we have a bias in how we treat senior leaders at Godrej?
I would actually say the bar is higher for them, that they, especially on a values piece, the bar has to be higher. And we've actually seen, as we've sort of refreshed and reiterated our values, like people asking much harder questions on people's values, not anywhere close to sort of harassment and stuff, but even basic respect, like be on time to a meeting and stuff. So I think the bar is higher for GLF. That's why they're at the GLF, correct? Yeah. They're not at GLF because they walk around with a crown on their head. They're GLF because they have to not only deliver results, but uphold the sort of company's values. So I would say that the bar is is super high. You know, we've not had anyone obviously implicated at Godrej as of now, but if anyone, you know, has a complaint, they want to write to me, they want to have a discussion, I'm sort of always available. Sumit's available, other, you know, Balram, other members in the GLF are available, but you know, absolutely no one will be excused if any of this comes up.
My 30 years, rules have been same for everybody. So I'm saying, take for example financial discipline or any other kind of harassment. I have seen whether it is a sales representative or a vice president, there have been no change of rules. So rules have been same. So I'm sure that this will continue. I think this is part of our DNA, and I don't think that this question you have asked, whether the rules will be different for other people, will ever be asked in this organization, definitely.
I'm glad. Can we extend that outwards to people we work with, like say vendors, suppliers? We don't just work with our own employees.
Most definitely.
You know, we are part of an ecosystem, and so many progressive companies, you know, set the same.
We've had a vendor sort of come under this Me Too thing, and we've asked for an independent investigation. So absolutely, they would. I don't think there's any point of like shooting a video like this, talking about our values. You know, unless your money is where your mouth is, which is holding people accountable for this sort of stuff, and that's the problem, right? It's the people in power, it's the people who've risen to the top who are using this power, and it takes equally powerful, right? Whether it's a rage of collective women. And social media,
and men,
or powerful, and men. No, but I'm saying the collective women, or powerful men and women in organizations like us to say, dude, this is not happening on my watch. You know, so I think it's both those things that are very important. Like he said, hopefully a lot of this will go to legal redress. But for, you know, companies, in a way, at least on the sexual harassment policy, are the legal redress in these sort of cases.
So people who work very closely with us, and I'm talking about all Godrej companies, there is a certain amount of due diligence we do on environmental, on their solvency, on safety standards, etc., depending on where we hire them. But I am sure that now we will be more vigilant on these issues also, and we will go probably deeper, because definitely these vendors who work closely with us will also reflect us in some way in case they get into trouble. So I think we will be more vigilant, and I think we should and will create processes to monitor this also.
Thank you. And this is global best practice. So, you know, and a company like IBM, for example, which is so LGBT friendly, only works with other suppliers who have the same benefits for their employees. I think it's a useful inflection point to consider how we can include some of these practices in what we do as well.
Or even vendors which are, you know, smaller vendors which are women owned or LGBT owned or have these policies. So that's what I was meaning. Like powerful men, women, companies can use themselves as a force for good also.
And if anyone who's watching this wants to suggest in the comments box below any ideas for vendors like this, or indeed anything that we can do.
Or anything that we can, if there's someone, because there will be people who are watching this video and saying, but this is not my experience, correct? I'm not experiencing these values, or something's happening to me, or I actually want to question this, then do it in the comment section, because we will support you, or just write to one of us, correct? Because I think that's the most important thing, that we're constantly having these conversations, because then if we do that, then we don't have to have movements every 5 or 10 years, correct? At least for Godrej, we should be constantly having these conversations.
And in addition to this, people who are watching this video, in case they want to make suggestions on better screening or monitoring of vendors, or instituting some process where something like this will be detected, we will be more than glad to look at that.
Or indeed on things like unconscious bias, anything actually, yeah.
So I wanted to address one more thing which you sort of haven't asked about, especially in this Me Too that comes up. What about the poor men who've been accused, and can't someone at Godrej just sort of accuse someone because of not that it's fake and they're trying to get them out of the organization? And I think the answer to that is one is we put due process on the side, but in most of these cases, and research shows 95% the woman's telling the truth, correct? And think about it, in a country like India or even a company like Godrej, who wants to say that someone has done this, correct? Look at the backlash, correct? Like we were discussing, Donald Trump is there. Mr. Brett's now on the is on the Supreme Court, and we're not talking about these women sort of anymore. So I actually think the moment has come for us to, men have always sort of, the rules have been around them, correct? So I think we need to stop saying poor men. That being said, it's not that if something like this comes in Godrej, if someone complains, we just call someone in and say you're fired or whatever. There is due process, there is sort of investigation, and sometimes things are grey.
When you said that this lady is coming out and speaking, I think in a country like India, the coming out and speaking is a very, very big thing. So it should be taken seriously. That's what I think, because the backlash, social ostracization which can follow. Because in most of the cases, there might not be a legal closure. So you must always remember that
they have nothing to gain from this. You're saying 15 minutes of fame, but what is this?
I'm saying that the coming out also is very important.
Well, I think for us, and the reason why I'm part of this is that I really believe that, our Godrej can be a really strong space for change to happen. I think the Me Too movement in India and these conversations are actually a very important inflection point for us to really reflect on and help enable and create the kind of Godrej that we want to live in, but also serve as a role model, say, for other organizations. So consider this as just the first part of an ongoing conversation. As both Nisa and Balram have said, if you're watching and you want to contribute, you can comment in the boxes. You can mail all of us. Let's keep these conversations going. Thank you so much to both of you for being part of The Real Deal. And thank you all of you for watching.